Sports Illustrated's MMA Knockout. Here today with the original two-division UFC champion, Randy Couture, to talk about Affliction as well as his UFC career. Randy, how's it going today?
Going good, Chris. Thanks for having me on, buddy. I appreciate you.
Of course, man. You're a spokesperson for Affliction now. I believe that they sponsored you earlier in your career. So can you take me
Yeah.
back to your earliest memories of Affliction?
Yeah, well, I was doing a an appearance at a boot tire barn up in Sacramento, and I was commentating for the UFC at the time. Uh, Tim Sylvia and Jeff Munson were fighting on that card in the heavyweight division. Uh, the tire barn was a sponsor of mine, and I go to do an appearance at one of their shops in Sacramento, and here's Tom Atencio from Affliction in the back of his Dodge, handing out shirts, and he gave me a few shirts, and we started talking. And he said, "Man, you got a big fight coming up against him. We should do a walkout shirt for you." And that was how the relationship started. They couldn't make those shirts fast enough. They sold like crazy. Uh, Todd Beard, the old owner of Affliction, came to Vegas to give me my first royalty check from Affliction from those T-shirts. He takes a look at the gym, which is called Extreme Couture. He's like, "Oh my God, that's a huge name in fashion. You should, we should do a line of clothes." Well, I already had uh, categories, copyrights, and all that for Extreme Couture in those categories. So I signed those to a partnership with Affliction, and we started making Extreme Couture clothing. They're still making those clothes to this day, and I've been a brand ambassador for them ever since. So it's been a great relationship. It's been fun. I think at one point we were sponsoring over 30 fighters with Extreme Couture and Affliction. So they definitely picked up the mantle and supported a lot of athletes in our sport.
Very cool to see, and congratulations to you on that and your relationship with them. I guess what was your kind of first impression of them as as a fashion brand, and what did you make of the style? Because it's very like old school kind of UFC. It's kind of synonymous with the early 2000s UFC.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's very graphic driven. Obviously, like the shirt I'm wearing today, it's reminiscent to that first walkout shirt with the two skulls and the military helmets they had. And uh, they've always been a very graphic driven brand. They have some amazing artists in there that draw a lot of this stuff on paper before it ever makes it to a shirt. They kind of, that small boutique store is where they flourished and where they did so much that allowed them and put them in a position to support this sport and so many fighters in this sport and sponsor so many guys, myself included. So I felt very fortunate to be involved with them and to see the company grow the way it's grown. Obviously, now they have a spin-off brand called Howitzer Clothing, and it's a give back brand to first responders, veterans, and law enforcement. And those are areas where I've been operating for a long, long time as well. So, again, more synergy with this company, with this brand, with Eric Foss, with all the folks there. Um, Lucinda and so many folks I've gotten to know there over the years. So it's been great. It's been a really, really strong relationship for me.
Most definitely. And how many fighters are you sponsoring nowadays?
Well, that changed. The UFC went to uniforms, signed a deal with Reebok for a lot of money, and kind of eliminated that opportunity, at least in that promotion. We're still sponsoring some fighters in Bellator and some of the other promotions, but um, certainly the PFL is allowing sponsorships and all that. But all that kind of went away when the UFC signed the uniform deal. So um, that was kind of a slap in the face, honestly, to the fighters. There's a lot of money, especially for the mid-tier and lower-tier fighters that could build those relationships, sell those spots on their banners and on their shorts, and make almost, if not more money from those relationships than from the actual fight purse. So, I think that was one of the issues in our sport, and certainly with the UFC brand in particular.
Most definitely. And with the uniforms, I feel like fighters should at least have the banners now that they have to wear some other shorts. But hopefully they bring that back someday. But we'll see, right?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
So another question about Affliction. How does it stand out from other brands in the industry?
Well, I think first and foremost, that graphic driven shirt, some of the modalities that they've used, the appliques, the blings, the crystals glued on. They did a lot of things differently than anybody else was doing it at that time. So I think you know, I like what the Howitzer brand is doing now. It's not a $60 T-shirt, which was, some people didn't want to spend that much money on a fashion shirt like an Affliction shirt, and now there's kind of that mid tier, the Extreme Couture brand, or the Howitzer brand that is more in the Tractor Supply stores and the outdoor stores and that sort of thing, which I think appeals to a broader audience. But we certainly have our place in the fight world. Tap out set that benchmark, and in many ways didn't kind of maintain the integrity of their brand. And I think Affliction did a great job of kind of maintaining that integrity of the brand. They weren't going to allow that to go to a Walmart or a bargain basement type outlet. They fought very hard to keep that integrity in place.
And I wanted to ask you about the UFC, about your old division, the light heavyweight division. The division itself was ran by Jon Jones for a lot of years. Now we're starting to see a little bit of consistency from Alex Pereira. I asked Forrest Griffin about him, and he raved about his activity. What do you kind of take away from the Alex Pereira and the aura that he has around him?
Well, Alex has done an amazing job. Moving up a weight class is not an easy thing to do, I'm sure. And we're seeing this across the board in the sport. A lot of guys stop cutting all the weight, and then they really seem to come into their own and flourish, and they're not depleting themselves. It's safer for them stepping in the cage, and they seem to perform with a better gas tank and just overall have better accolades when they stop cutting all the weight. And I think Pereira is no different in that regard. It'd be interesting to see if he decides to move up to heavyweight. He's been talking a little bit about moving up. He might be potentially the first 3-division champ. Could be interesting. So I've heard great things about him. I haven't actually met the man myself, and shook his hand and looked him in the eye. And but I hear a lot of great things about his work ethic, about how good he is, and what a tremendous athlete and competitor he is.
You know something about being a 2 division champion. For him, if he were to go to heavyweight, what would be your best advice for him to go into your old division?
I think fighting the bigger guys it poses different problems. He's a smart guy. He's a diligent fighter. He sharpens the appropriate tools. You don't want to stand around in front of guys that size, and try and go power for power and trade blows. You got to make them grapple, make them move their feet, use your strengths and athleticism and mobility against them, so to speak. And so it'll be interesting to see how he solves those problems if he moves up and tries to take on the bigger guys. And will that be a Stipe Miocic or Jon Jones, or whoever is sitting at the top of the heap? Then I think those are interesting matchups for sure.
Does a move to heavyweight take that much time? Because with Jon Jones, he took 3 years for him to change up his physique to a heavyweight physique. So does Alex Pereira need to take time off to really adjust to heavyweight?
I don't think he'll need to take that much time off. It's honestly more of a tactical and technical problem than putting on a bunch of fake or false size to deal with the heavyweights. I actually felt like it was easier to tip over, easier to sweep or move around when I got heavier. It changed my center of gravity. So I like staying around 220, 223 for all my fights, whether it was heavyweight or light heavyweight. And it wasn't a tough cut to make light heavyweight. I was certainly a small heavyweight, but I liked being more mobile, more agile, and using that as a weapon against the bigger, taller, maybe less athletic guys.
Mm-hmm. And Randy, as somebody that fought into their 40s, you fought the best of the best, at 45, 46, 47. Do you believe that Stipe and Jon will fight again after UFC 309?
It's hard to say. They're certainly both capable and both operating within their realm. It's been, over 2 years for Jon, a little less than that for Stipe. So as far as like ring rust or any of that, I think they're both looking at the same issue, potentially, being out of it for a little while and kind of getting themselves back up into fight shape and fight mentality. But I don't think that's going to be an issue for either one of them. I think however this one goes down, if we have another one, that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. What kept you going when you were fighting in your 40s? Where was your mindset at? And how different were you as a fighter as opposed to when you were in your 30s?
I think as we get older, we train smarter. We do things better. We are smarter athletes. And that was certainly the case for me. I stopped doing some of the dumb crap I did when I was younger. and learn to refine and keep a training log and really kind of, you know, be a student of the game and figure out what's working, what's not working. And that's why those losses are so important. That's your opportunity to recognize, oh, I need to make some adjustments. I need to figure out what I did wrong here, where my mistakes were, and come back and fix them, be a better athlete, and I think at the end of the day, a better human.
Hmm. And last question for you, Andy. Just thank you again for the time. Who are like a couple of fighters that you would like to see inducted into UFC Hall of Fame, say in the next coming years?
I mean, there's so many amazing fighters. You know, I think it's a bit of a travesty that Frank Shamrock hasn't been recognized and put in the Hall of Fame. And you know, sometimes, you know, there are personality issues, personality rubs, if you will, and that's where that's coming from. But he still, you know, he achieved a lot of accolades and should be included in there. You know, I think Mighty Mouse Johnson's another one that comes up that is arguably pound for pound one of the best fighters we've ever seen in his technical abilities and the way he approached the sport. And I feel he's another one that should be recognized for that. But they're, you know, start opening up the can of worms of who's the GOAT and all these other conversations that are so subjective that you can make a case for a lot of guys for a lot of reasons. And at the end of the day, you kind of want to just see everybody get the recognition they deserve. Everybody needs to be and deserves to be recognized for what they've contributed to the sport.